needed. And Ashok, I'm very, very happy to have you with us today. Maybe just as we kick off, just take a moment to describe to people what you do and the kind of span of the world that your particular responsibilities cover, just to give people a sense, because of course Barclays is a high street name for many folk, but just describe your role if you would.
Sure. Lindsay, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's always fabulous to catch up with you. That trip in Kenya was a defining moment in my career, and I really look back to that with very fond memories. Currently, like you said, I'm the global head for everything to do with consumer banking, the private bank, and payments. And essentially speaking, we focus on the transatlantic corridor, which is Europe and the United States. We do have some private banking activities in Asia and Middle East, but essentially our focus is the transatlantic corridor.
Great, thank you. So let's jump in and talk about the times that we're living in. And I'm going to start in particular with the coronavirus and the economic fallout since then. Banks, especially consumer-facing banks working with business and so forth, as well as individuals, are right at the forefront of people really in huge economic distress. And in some countries, you've been pulled in by the government to help with various programs, to keep people afloat and to keep businesses afloat. Can you just speak a little bit about how you've been called upon to respond and what that's meant for your people in the business and for your customers?
So Lindsay, when I went through the global financial crisis about a decade ago, I thought that was a black swan event, and I thought I'd never see anything like that again in my career. Unfortunately, I find myself 10 years later in, can't even call it black swan any longer, because it just happened so quickly, much more impactful, much more global, and really has put a scare into people. So I think there's been a couple of stages that we've kind of gone through with this. I think the initial stage was just kind of shock as to how could something like this have happened so much across the globe. And at that time, I think our focus was primarily how do we take care of our colleagues and our customers from a health and safety perspective, and how can we be there? So operational resilience. We thought we were very, very well diversified with operations in the United States, Philippines, India, UK. And we said, whichever, not in one city, not in one location, differentiated people, you can move work around. And suddenly, all of it came to a standstill. And therefore, operational resilience, dealing with colleagues' health and safety, I think was the first one. I think the next one was when it became evident that, look, this is going to become a kind of normal way of working, at least for the next 3 to 4 months. It's a matter of how do we get the colleagues to actually start serving in the interest of our customers and doing it in a way that they can do it from home. So we were about 2,000 colleagues at most who would be working from home at any one given point in time. In a matter of less than 2 weeks, we went to 70,000 colleagues working from home. And this included delivering laptops. This included subscribing to broadband in certain areas where our colleagues didn't have broadband at home and stuff like that, right? How do you put in controls? How do you make sure that the right things are said? How do you make sure that conversations are taped? All kinds of issues to really gear up to deal with it. Then it was all about our customers and our clients. We have to be there for our customers and our clients at this point in time, right? We have to be there for our customers and clients, bringing together not only all the programs that the government is putting together, but what else can we do to kind of make sure that our clients are kind of being taken care of. And then managing the various stakeholders, right, from the board, regulators, government, consumer agencies, and stuff like that. So that's what life has been at Barclays, Lindsay, over the last, call it about 3.5 months. What is fascinating, and I do want to make a plug for Citizens Advice. For those of you who don't know Citizens Advice, it is a absolutely first-rate organization in the UK. In all my travels around the world, I have not seen a parallel organization. And I'm very proud and humbled to be a national trustee on Citizens Advice. And the way Citizens Advice, which basically takes care of any query that a UK citizen may have, well, England and Wales citizen may have, right? And how they have actually flipped and actually come to serve the most vulnerable, the most needy, with a volunteer base of 70,000 is just kind of amazing. So I have really seen the worst that could happen to us, and I think I've also seen the best of what people can bring to an extremely difficult situation.
Right, and presumably your people have been working, and many of them, extraordinary hours, right? It's some people have lost their jobs and other people are working pretty much non-stop, I can imagine, given all the, you know, the technology and continuity needed.
It is amazing, Lindsay, and it's not easy. Working from home, of course, the commute goes away, but there are a whole bunch of issues, and at least I've been very, very consciously talking about what does it mean to be working from home from a mental health perspective, right? What does it mean to have the kids running around at home? What does it mean to have your partner or spouse in another room? You know, pressure, all kinds of stuff. And we've got to talk about these things. These things we are social animals.
Right.
We need interaction. And, you know, it can be pretty isolating.
Right, right.
So there are a whole bunch of issues.
Thank you. So let's then talk about an issue that's been with us all along, but has risen dramatically to the front of people's minds in the last couple of weeks following the murder of George Floyd and the protests that we've seen all over the world. I know you've lived in the States for big parts of your life. You, of course, grew up in a country with extraordinary challenges around inequality and exclusion and different facets of racial divides. And here we are now with protests, largely peaceful protests, all over the US, every state, in fact, cities all over the place, and in cities all around the world. So we're in an incredible time. And I think when many people, many white people like myself, people of all races, are frankly asking questions of ourselves, I hope and believe in a much deeper way than perhaps we've done in the past. So this particular moment, I know your CEO, Jess Staley, wrote a letter, as did many CEOs actually this past week, to all employees. There's this sort of, I think, recognition that we're going to have to step up in very different ways, and that we've kind of missed the point to some extent to date. It would be my description of the situation. And that this is an incredible opportunity. And I just wonder what your take is on what's going on just now, and how you as a leader and your team see yourselves, I guess, questioning how you step up further on issues of race and inequality and social justice.
So, Lindsay, this is one which is personal, right? Because you know, it's one thing to have a pandemic, it's one thing to have economic fallout, it's another thing then to have the social outcomes of this kind of stuff. And social outcomes express themselves in many different ways, right? Racism of any sort is completely unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. I am, you know, from India. I live in the UK. I'm a migrant. I have been given the opportunities. I've been given the opportunities because I've worked hard at it. Many more people like me around the world are working really hard. We may not be mainstream, but look, at the end of it, we all are people. We are all human beings. And for one human being to discriminate against another human being purely because somebody looks a little darker or lighter, or is of a different sex, or has a different sexual orientation, or has different beliefs, or believes in different kinds of religion, in my books, completely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. The fact that we have to even acknowledge we are different, frankly, is frustrating. We frankly are all human beings. We all are trying to do our best, and we just simply cannot tolerate this kind of racism. This really is quite personal, and I think all of us feel strongly about it. I know at Barclays we feel very strongly about it. Every single person is there because of what they do, because of what they bring, completely irrespective of any other aspect from where that person came from, which ethnicity, which race, which gender, etc.
So just sort of building on that a little bit, thinking about what you call shared value. You've got a mission in Barclays around creating opportunities for people to rise. And by that, you mean opportunities for people to step up, live their lives more fully, build businesses, build resources for their families and so forth. Could you say a little bit about what that means to you, and maybe give us an example of something that you've done in the bank that you feel proud of, in terms of creating shared value and really getting beyond the words on the page or the words that people stick in the lobby of the building?
Yeah. So Lindsay, this is the thing that we started when we were all out in Kenya, right? That was a defining moment. For me, it became so clear on that particular leader's quest that every single company must fulfill a social purpose, right? Just chasing the bottom line is completely wrong thing to do. What is the social purpose that you're fulfilling? And if you're fulfilling a social purpose, everything else kind of falls behind. Who needs another bank? I mean, there's so many banks around the world. Who needs another bank? You need a company that helps people meet their objectives. Finances, economics are also intertwined into our lives. We need companies that will help. We need banks that will help people meet their goals, have the confidence to meet their aspirations, right? And that's why we've all come and kind of, rallied around this whole notion of creating opportunities to rise. This is creating opportunities to rise for the largest companies in the world. This is creating opportunities to rise for governments in the world. This is about you and me as individuals. This could be you wanting to be, the CEO of a very prominent organization dealing with climate change, or it could just be me wanting to put my daughter through college, right? But it is my hope and aspiration that my daughter goes to a college, right? And I put her onto a plank which gives her an opportunity to rise. I put myself through whatever it takes to put her into that college. Everybody knows how expensive college education is. So creating opportunities to rise is a rallying cry for us. It's a North Star for us, right? And every decision we make, every framework we put into place has to fit into that kind of thing as to how we are helping our clients, our customers, our colleagues to really take advantage of the opportunity. How do we give them the confidence that they can rise to their fullest potential? The teams, once you give this kind of rallying cry and you have this kind of North Star, my God, the teams kind of do incredible work, right? We spotted the digital transformation about 6-7 years ago. The Digital Eagle program that was formed, helping people, not even customers, anybody. And then the incredible stories, right? Incredible stories. A 103-year-old grandfather walking into one of our branches with an iPad, right? Talking to one of our Digital Eagles and saying, my grandkids gave me this. I haven't got a clue as to what to do with this, right? Can you just show me how I can Skype with my grandkids, right? My God, can you imagine that? Or there were two widowed sisters in a small town, in a really, really small town, right? And all they wanted to do in their old age was to learn salsa. And they could get onto YouTube and actually see how salsa was done, right? There's this a veteran who had fought in World War II, too old to travel, but using Google Maps could get and see, the places where he was in Malaysia more than 60 years ago. I mean, these are just stories that are incredible, helping people lead more fulfilling lives.
So you, could you explain a little bit in practice what you did? Because you've enabled, if I understand correctly, thousands of employees to step up and offer these skills and services to customers, which are not, directly linked to revenue. And presumably you've got colleagues around you who are asking, why are we investing in this and how does this work? How do you steer a path in a very tough, demanding financial environment to create enough space for people to do some things that are not directly related to the bottom line necessarily?
Yeah. So Lindsay, actually, as you know, and you taught us, it is very strongly linked to the bottom line, but you just got to see that kind of connection, right? See, look, we understood that the digital transformation has to happen. We started on this journey 2011. So I'm not talking today where it's taken for kind of granted, right? 2011, at that time, we quickly realized that, every company spends a lot of money on technology. It's not the amount of money you spend on technology. It's a cultural mindset shift of the organization. How do you get the mindset of the organization to shift? We literally took 19 people, irrespective of hierarchy. By the way, I was in a WhatsApp group with the 19. And these 19 were only qualified for two things. They were excited about the technology and they were excited to talk to their colleagues about that technology. We brought them into our head office for 3 days, trained them a little bit on the tools that we had, sent them back out and said, go and meet as many colleagues as you can. And when you find somebody like yourself who's excited about the technology, excited about teaching other colleagues, bring him into this movement. And we call these people digital eagles. Digital because it is all digital, eagles because that's our logo, right? So it started out as a organizational, cultural mindset shift. This caught on so much that we went to 18,000 colleagues. We actually had a test. You had to do the test. Once you did the test, you qualified to be digitally certified. You actually got a certificate from City and Guild saying you were digitally savvy. And then they came to me and said, why are you stopping us from just talking to colleagues? Why can't we talk to customers? It's our customers who need it a lot. And that's how it evolved into that, right? And from there, frankly, Lindsay, we've taken it to the next stage where we evolved it into something called Eagle Labs. We were getting so much pressure from the government for shutting down branches. Instead of shutting down a branch, we just created an environment where we could rejuvenate the community. The banker of the old day knew everybody in the community. How do we rejuvenate the community in the digital age? So these Eagle Labs were fitted with things like 3D printers, laser cutters, and stuff like that, where the community could come in and do a whole bunch of stuff, right? And that, they became centers for economic activity. So even while footfall in the branches was coming down dramatically, we saw footfall in these things go up kind of dramatically. And in a Brexit environment, we actually changed these Eagle Labs to make them industry specific. Legal labs, agri-tech, edu-tech, stuff like that. It really is about creating opportunities for rise, right from an individual person to the community, to the government, to small businesses across the board. Right. And obviously that creates a massive halo effect for the company. Our colleagues feel very, very good about it. And that's what delivers big time to the bottom line.
Now, of course, a lot of people listening, they're listening from all over the world, but the banking sector is not one of the best loved industries, I guess would be one way to put it. Plenty of bad headlines over the years for Barclays, legal cases, fines, and all the rest of it. And I just wonder if you could speak a little bit personally to that experience and, how confident you really are about your sector's capacity and your broader colleagues' capacity to lead in this moment, because I think we are at a very interesting point with big business, with capitalism, where we, and I always like to use the term we have not delivered as well as people would wish, and I just wonder if you could speak to that gap, frankly.
Sure, Lindsay, I joined Barclays just as we were getting out of the financial crisis, like early 2010. So for the last 10 years, literally for the last decade, most of my time has been going on building back trust and reputation, most of my efforts have been, how do we change the culture of the organization? How do we get that to be actually perceived as a different kind of organization, different kind of people? I must say, I walk around the company and I look at the white of the eyes of my colleagues, and I say, these are not bad people. These are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. It's not their fault. It's just that our whole system was not working properly. And so we have to change the system, and we as leaders have to take responsibility, right? And I think this time around, we have realized that, look, this thing is not of our making, right? You can't blame the pandemic on the banks, but clearly it is a significant opportunity for us to step forward and do something different. And we are just absolutely determined to do that, right? And we've gone out of our way to try and get this right. Now, jury is out whether we'll get it absolutely right, but I am exceedingly confident we're not going to get this entirely wrong either. How much we are able to leap forward and create a change in perception is, of course, out to be seen. But I am determined that the bank actually come out as a factor of good out of this crisis.
And could you say a little bit about the qualities, the leadership qualities that you think we need more of, and some of what you're looking for, as you look to a next generation of colleagues? What are the qualities that you're looking for that perhaps we haven't focused enough on in the past?
So, Lindsay, it's very interesting. Knowledge about stuff is becoming less and less and less and less relevant, right? Knowledge about stuff is available. It's much easier available today than it was yesterday. And anybody who's willing to do the research and stuff like that, all that knowledge is out there. What we are really looking for is human elements, empathy, creativity, leadership, right? In times like this, particularly in times like this where there is so much uncertainty, there is right from, don't know what to do to extreme fear. What you're looking for your leaders to do is, number one, acknowledge that these are uncertain times. Nobody has the answers. I would be foolish to say I have the answers. I don't. I'm suffering from the same level of, insecurities, worries, like every other person, right? But what I can do is try and create some greater level, a relatively higher level of certainty than absolute, complete chaos. And therefore, that human element of saying, okay, look, there's a hell of a lot going on out here. God knows what's going to happen, but these are the three things, right? Let's make sure that these are the three things we're doing under these three kind of circumstances. So creating a level of certainty within a huge level of uncertainty, I think, is a big, big, big deal. I think calling out the fact that, I don't have all the answers. I think humility is a huge deal, that we are in this together, and together we shall find a way as to what we're going to do. I think it's really, really important to give people hope and have the courage. Like they always say, never let a good crisis go to waste. So what are we going to do to leapfrog out of this? How are we going to emerge bigger and stronger? And I think those elements of, staying calm, staying collected, recognizing that we don't have all the answers, but yet having the guts or the courage to dream of a tomorrow, which is much better, I think is what folks would look for.
Great. Now, in a moment, we're going to go to questions. And so those of you who want to ask questions, you can pop into the participants section and put a raised hand and we'll call upon you. So just give people a moment to do that. We'd love to welcome different questions from around the world. Just before that, one more question from me, Ashok. I was pleased to hear Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, now working with the UN on climate change, actually call out Barclays the other day in the launch of the run-up to the UN climate conference for stepping up in various ways, including back in March, you committed to be net zero by 2050. This is in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, a big issue that I'm working on along with others. And as we know, that's the basic standard that we need everybody to get to. My guess is that you probably feel yourselves early on in the journey of the kind of transformation. You know, the banking sector, the finance sector has a lot to do, and is probably, and dare I say, Barclays is the early stages of figuring that out. But could you just comment on, you know, if you look at this next decade, a decade when we need to halve greenhouse gas emissions across the world, you know, how you see your sector really stepping up in that regard?
So, Lindsay, I think this is a hugely critical matter. And, you know, you reflect upon even what's happened in the last 3 months or so, at least I have, and I don't know if others have, is that, you know, when you push something to an extreme, it kind of bounces back right to the other extreme, right? And maybe this is nature's way of telling us, guys, you just pushed it too hard. And therefore, I'm just going to shut everything down, and I'm going to go into reset mode for a month or 3 months. I think this is a warning to us, right? And I think at Barclays, we are taking this extremely seriously. In fact, we've appointed, and I think, Lindsay, you and I may have talked about it, we've appointed a senior person at Group Exco whose sole job is going to be sustainability, right? And sustainability in the broadest sense of the word. And we're going to take action around this. Now, we're going to learn our way into it. It's not easy. There will be trade-offs that have to be made, but we're very committed to making those trade-offs and getting this right. This is a hugely important agenda item, and we are starting to do it. And you know, each one of us can do our own little thing, and it will have an impact. And right from each one of us doing our own little thing, to the organization doing a lot of stuff, to governments doing a lot of stuff, I think will have a massive impact. And like you and I discussed, we're really talking about how do we put together a very robust plan to meet the kind of objectives we've talked about. We've made all the commitments, we've cut down on a whole bunch of activities and stuff like that. But to me, that's just the start, right? How we actually think about this differently. Pretty much like over the last 7-8 years, we've thought about digital differently is, I think, the way we'll have to go on this journey.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to invite people who'd like to ask a question. If you click on the participants area at the bottom of your screen and then click on a raised hand. Marina, I was going to call on you. I saw it in the chat. Go for it. Love to hear from Marina Kapoor. You come off mute and ask your question.
Thank you. I have. So welcome, Ashok. I was at Barclays many years ago and loved my experience over there. There was real commitment to culture transformation, but I don't think it was sustained, which has been in many organizations. So my question really is, like you said, about the big pause and the reset button. So what is that absolutely, we must not do this, or we must definitely do this as a reset for Barclays for the future?
So, Marina, first of all, fantastic to meet an ex-colleague. I don't know which part of the world you are from.
India, but I'm in the UK, and I've been in Singapore and Jersey and other places.
Wow, wow. So you've been all over the world. Look, I personally think, and that, you know, Barclays has been on an incredible cultural journey. I mean, the Barclays that I joined in 2010 versus the Barclays that I work in today, night and day difference. Honestly, night and day difference. Do we get everything right, Marina? I can assure you we don't. But do we get most things, or do we get much more right today than we were getting right, 10 years ago? I would say definitely the case. This thing is all about sustaining itself, right? Culture, I mean, there's so many definitions of culture and stuff like that, but one of the best definitions I like is, it's how you behave when nobody's watching you, right? And I would say that therefore that has to become a habit. And I would say it's definitely become much more of a habit today than it was in the past. Is it deeply ingrained? May not be so. Will it keep changing? Does culture continually have to evolve? It has to. And therefore, is this a destination or is this a journey? And my submission to you, Marina, would be it's a journey.
Thank you. Els Draper, let's hear from you. Welcome. If you come off mute.
Sorry. Thanks, Lindsay, and hi, Ashok. Lovely to see you. I will, if I may, return to the question of racism, something that's on my mind, as I'm sure most people on the call, and whether that's overt or through unconscious biases and structures that career-wise can create hurdles and barriers for certain people in certain communities. Under your leadership at Barclays, they've created several groundbreaking initiatives, particularly things like the apprenticeship scheme, to really open up opportunities to diverse candidates. What are the one or two big things that you'd really like to see large organizations take that could really change the dynamic in the space of really tackling this issue of diversity and career opportunities?
So, Elaine, first of all, fantastic to see you. It's been a while. Hey, Marina, by the way, Elaine is one of these huge culture carriers at Barclays. She decided to kind of move on and do bigger and better stuff. But we miss you, Elaine. You were such a critical part of that entire cultural transformation that we went through and are continuing to kind of go through. Elaine, look, nobody better than you to know that everything we tried to do was to try and say, hey, look, diversity is very important, inclusion is very important, and we're going to do everything in our power to give people the opportunity to rise, right? Irrespective of background, irrespective of hierarchy, irrespective of obviously sex, gender, ethnicity, or sexual preference, right? To my mind, I think the basic message to all leaders is, look, diversity and inclusion is not a nice to do. It makes a huge amount of business sense. Now, if you look at, let's say, our business and look, we are in the consumer business, we deal with millions and millions of customers all over the world. 24 million in the UK, 11 million in the US, 2-3 million in Europe, a couple of 100,000 in Middle East. All these people we deal with are very, very different. By definition, they come from different nationalities. By definition, half of them are men, half of them are women, or about that, right? They're different cultural orientations. By definition, they come from different socio-economic backgrounds. And if our goal is to understand our customers and our prospects better, our employee base has to be that diverse. Our employee base has to start thinking like what our customers think. If you don't think like your customers think, you'll never ever be able to meet the needs of your customers. So this is not about CSR. This is not about philanthropy. This is not about doing good stuff. Of course, it's all of the above, but primarily, this is good business sense. And if it's good business sense, every business leader should be trying to push this agenda. Every business leader should be looking around and saying, is my team diverse enough that and therefore reflective enough of the people that I'm trying to serve? And it's only if your team is reflective enough of the customers that you're going to serve will you be successful. It's just as simple as that.
So I want to we've got time for one more question. Anita Hoffman, you've popped a question in the chat. Would love to hear from you if you want to come off mute, or I can ask the question for you, but it'd be great if we could hear from you. I think you're on the phone rather than the video. So let me ask your question for you. So Anita asks, the net zero goal by 2050, do you include the business you finance in that, or is it just about your own footprint? You know, one of the big issues for banks, of course, is being asked to think about what you're financing, finance green growth as opposed to fossil fuel growth. A challenging question, I know, but it'd be great to hear from you on that.
No, so Anita, look, we've got to start first with ourselves, right? You've got to start with yourselves and what you do, and then you evolve the agenda along and get more and more people engaged in this agenda. And, there are things that we are going to start doing, and we are going to learn, and we're going to carry our colleagues and our customers on this journey, right? This is not something that, I don't think we have a master plan. I don't think it's possible to say, hey, this is the master plan sitting in 2020, what we're going to do in 2030, 2040, 2050. What we know is these are aspirational statements of intent. We're going to deliver upon these aspirational statements of intent over a period of time, and our plan is going to evolve, and it's going to change, and it's going to involve what we know is we're going to do it, and we're going to involve more and more people in this journey to finally get there and get to a good place.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I know, just to comment from my side on that, one of the things that we're seeing a lot with businesses is committing to targets where we don't know how to get there. Important to, you can't only commit to things where you know the answer. And then actually, frankly, having to innovate and find ways to do it. So I appreciate that. And the pressure to drive faster change must and will continue. I just want to finish, Ashok, with a personal question. I think it will have come over to people on this call. You're a very passionate person. You kind of bring your whole self to what you do. I think of you as a great optimist. And I wonder if you could just, and I also know, by the way, that sometimes that means, of course, you're part of a leadership team. Not everybody agrees all of the time. You may be representing a particular point of view, and you have to try to bring colleagues with you. Could you speak a little bit about what fuels you, where you get your own energy from, your passion from, how you sustain that? A little bit of what drives you and keeps you going and enables you to thrive.
So, Lindsay, for one, I really, really love what I do. I think life is too short. You got to really love what you do, right? Number two, I am deeply grateful. I am deeply grateful for all the opportunities that have been given to me. For me to be, 30 years ago, if you had asked me, would you have even, could I have even dreamt of traveling on a plane across the world, I would have said, I'm not sure that that's possible, right? So I'm deeply grateful. And therefore, I have belief. I have deep belief in the ingenuity of people. I have deep belief in the power of positivity. Things will happen, but you've got to stay positive, and you've got to say, hey, this will bring out the best in me, and give it your best shot. Because if you give it your best shot, you will make a difference for yourself, and you'll make a difference for somebody else. Life has been good, and we've got to give back. We've got to make it right for everybody, for ourselves, and for everybody around us.
Ashok, thank you so much. You've been very generous with your time today. Really, really appreciate you joining us and spending this time and sharing what you've done. So huge, huge appreciation. Very good luck with everything you've got in front of you. I hope your influence can continue to bear fruit, not only within the bank, but across the industry. For everybody who's joined, thank you very much for being with us today. Please follow us. Feel free, all of these talks are on our website. You can share them and watch afterwards, and encourage others to join or to watch the talk afterwards. Follow us and promote on #LeadersLink. Our next Leaders Link will be 2 weeks from now. We're about to mail out a series of talks. We've got some fantastic leaders joining us from different sectors, very topical. We'll actually do 2 sessions 2 weeks from now, the week of the 25th, and that information will be with you very shortly. So thank you for being here. Wishing everybody a great rest of the day and a great forthcoming week.